I will now call to order the November 29, 2023 Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Land Use Hearing. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. We are holding this meeting in person and virtually. The Zoom link and instructions to participate via Zoom are located at clackamas.us/meetings/bcc/land-use. Today we will consider an application by Everett Griffin, identified as file Z0315-23-CP and Z0316-23-R to change the Willamette River Greenway designation on the subject property from limited use to multiple use to allow for the construction of a new private non-commercial dock and an application to approve to construct a private non-commercial dock. Public testimony will be taken this morning. As always, the public is welcome to sign up to testify. Those wishing to testify this morning will be called on to provide your testimony at the appropriate time. When you are called on, be sure to include your name and the area where you live. I would like to remind all participants, including staff and all elected officials and members of the public, that Robert's Rules of Order will be used in this meeting. We welcome your opinions and look forward to your polite participation. The hearing this morning will proceed as follows. Number one, we will first hear a presentation from Martha Fritzie, Principal Planner. Number two, next I will open the hearing for public testimony, beginning with the applicant who may present if they wish. You don't have to. Number three, then any public officials who wish to testify will have 3 minutes each. Number four, next, representatives from the recognized community planning organizations and agencies will have 3 minutes each. Finally, others wishing to testify will have 3 minutes each. Number six, the board will then deliberate and either render a decision today or set a time to make a decision at a later date. Assisting us in the room today is our clerk, Tony Marinick, Principal Planner Martha Fritzie, and Assistant County Counsel Caleb Hugel. Welcome and thank you for coming. We will now begin the hearing on Z0315-23-CP and Z0316-23R with a legal statement by Caleb Hugel, followed by the planning staff's presentation of their reports and recommendations.
Thank you, Chair Smith. This is a quasi-judicial land use hearing, which means several important things for those participating. First, the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards either those criteria or other criteria that the person believes apply to the decision. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the county and other parties an opportunity to respond precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. In addition, the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond precludes an action for damages in circuit court on those issues. Once final, the decision on this application may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. At this time, I will ask the commissioners to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing.
I have none. I have none.
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 If anyone wishes to challenge the impartiality of any commissioner, please clearly indicate your intention to do so in your testimony.
Thank you. Martha, are you up next?
I think I'm up. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to walk through. Excellent. So good morning. As was noted, we are here to discuss file Z0315-23CP and Z0316-23R. These include a proposed comprehensive plan map amendment to change the Willamette River Greenway designation along the subject property from limited use to multiple use, specifically to allow for the construction of a new private non-commercial dock. The second application is actually a dock application to construct a 700 square foot dock, and this second application is only approvable in this case if the first application is also approved. I will reiterate that a few times, I think. So before we get into this, and I don't actually expect you to be able to read this map that's in front of you, but I just wanted to talk for a couple minutes about the Willamette River Greenway, because this is not something we talk about a lot here at the board. And so the Willamette River Greenway is a swath of water and land that surrounds the Willamette River. The Greenway Design Plan is the county's implementation of statewide planning goal 15. And statewide planning goal 15 specifically is the Willamette River Greenway. State statutes and rules require the Greenway be established. It's an intent, excuse me, to recognize the unique character of the Willamette River and to protect it for a wide range of uses. It largely was established to protect it for public use and access to the river for recreation and commerce, but also does recognize that there's private property along the river and existing homes and uses, including docks, and allows for the continuation of and intensification of uses along the river. And so what is the important piece of this for us today is that when Clackamas County established the Willamette River Greenway Design Plan, there were two specific water classifications. One is called limited use, one is called multiple use. The primary distinction between limited use and primary use is whether or not you are allowed to have a new dock. In limited use, you may not. It's very clear in our codes. And in multiple use, you may. And so the specific property owner that has applied for the comprehensive plan map amendment to change the water use designation in front of his property is in one of these limited use areas, and it's a little bit easier to see on this map here. The subject property itself is about a half a mile west of the Canby Ferry on the south side of the Willamette River. Excuse me, the property is about half an acre and already contains has a house on it. So you can see from this aerial photo that the subject property is located in a little strip of a subdivision. It's a residential area, although it is zoned exclusive farm use, but it's still, it's an older established rural residential area. There's 10 lots in this little subdivision, 9 of which contain homes, 5 of which already have docks, and those docks were existing prior to the establishment of the Willamette River Greenway. You can also see that across the river, sort of to the west, there's another similar area. Every single property over there already has a dock. That's also in the limited use. But in the more immediate surrounding area of the subject property, is the Molalla River State Park, and then other lands that are zoned exclusive farm use. And so I think that's important to keep in mind also, because being zoned exclusive farm use and timber, these areas very clearly have limited development capabilities, limited opportunity for further development. And so in large part, what you see is what you get here. And so there are large protected areas along the river already, and then these smaller sort of, when I say small, you know, half-acre to 2-acre lot subdivisions along the river. So the subject site, like I mentioned, is zoned EFU, exclusive farm use. The properties across the river and sort of to the east around to past the Molalla River State Park are all zoned EFU. And the Molalla River State Park itself is zoned timber. So that's just a little context and background. This application, notice was sent for this application back in September. We have only received 2 substantive comments. One is from a neighbor in support of this application. The other one is from the State Division of State Lands, and it essentially says that additional permits are required through the state for the dock, which we know. But that's fine. There were no other comments received, and the local community planning organization did not provide any comment either. And so there are a whole slew, of course, of relevant policies and criteria that need to be met anytime you're looking at proposing a change to the comprehensive plan. Most notably, it needs to comply with any relevant statewide planning goals. In this case, the most relevant one is Goal 15, the Willamette River Greenway. It also needs to comply with any relevant comprehensive plan goals and policies. Most of them are found in the chapters listed here. And then any relevant zoning and development ordinance criteria. For the comprehensive plan amendment, it's largely procedural. For the dock itself, that second application, it's section 705 of our zoning and development ordinance. It's called the Willamette River Greenway. That includes specific criteria for docks in terms of sizes and colors and any sort of design and development criteria that they would have to meet. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to hit the highlights for you. There is some findings and more discussion related to every single one of these criteria found in your packet in the Planning Commission staff report, and it's summarized in the board summary in your packet. So again, statewide planning goal 15, Willamette River Greenway, essentially is established to protect, conserve, enhance, and maintain the natural, scenic, historic, agricultural, economic, and recreational qualities of the lands along the Willamette River. And I put that on there because I think it's important that it's not just about protecting the water or the trees. It's a recognition that the Willamette River really does have a recreational component and economic, and that there's a lot of things going on in the Willamette River. It's not just about no development. And based on the history and the rules, it really appears that originally the Willamette River Greenway was largely established to preserve areas for public access and public use. But like I mentioned, it does recognize there are private uses and allows for them to continue and also to intensify. And so when the county adopted the design plan into Chapter 3, we adopted that map that I showed you earlier with the limited use and multiple use areas. It was about 4 decades ago. And since that time, there have been 3 other amendments like this one, where a private property owner applied to change the designation from limited use to multiple use, specifically to build a dock. And so this would be the 4th one in nearly 4 decades. And so this is not a process that is used often, but it's certainly available to any property owner who is along the river. And so there's nothing that staff could find in the Willamette River Greenway that requires us to prohibit docks in any particular areas of the river. And so after looking through all of the rules, staff has found that this proposed change would still be, the county would still be consistent with Goal 15, even if this change were approved. Other statewide planning goals are addressed, but they're not particularly relevant in this conversation here. You know, this is EFU land. It's consistent with Goal 3, which is agriculture, and Goal 12, transportation, which we always look at when we're doing a comp plan amendment. So moving on to the comprehensive plan policies. The county does have this limited use and multiple use water designations. That is a county designation. Again, I can't find anywhere that we were required to have these designations. And in fact, there's really no specificity in our comprehensive plan that directs us where and how and why even to designate these areas limited use versus multiple use. The closest we can get is this policy that's listed here, where it talks about prohibiting private non-commercial docks and moorages in the limited use portions to protect the natural river character. And so I guess the implication is that the limited use area is intended to protect the natural character of the river, which is fine. But in this case, when you look at the the specific circumstances of the subject property. It is in a developed residential area. It literally, on both sides, the properties have docks already, and I think it's pretty clear that this specific location is not really the natural character has already been affected. And furthermore, when docks are developed, subject to zoning ZDO Section 705, there are requirements that limit the amount of vegetation that can be disturbed and things like that. And so there are development standards intended to also help protect the natural character of the river. And so I think it is reasonable to conclude that it's not necessary to keep the limited use designation adjacent to the subject property, and that multiple use is a more appropriate designation. Other chapters, again, had to be looked at, but they're largely coordination and related and procedural. And so I'm just going to talk really briefly about the dock itself, the dock application. So I guess maybe I should just say that staff did find that the proposed amendment to change the designation from limited to multiple use does meet all of the relevant applicable standards. And so then as we're looking at the dock, I'm going to assume at this point that it's not in a limited use anymore, because like I said, this dock can't be approved if it's still located in the limited use area on the Willamette River Greenway. And just before we start, dock applications are generally what we call a type 2 application. It's not something that generally goes to hearing, not something that you would usually have to take a look at, but because the applicant applied concurrently with this proposed comprehensive plan amendment, we have to process them under the comp plan amendment process, which includes the hearings before the Planning Commission and before the board. So that's why you are even considering this dock application. And so this is just a schematic, the proposed dock. It's pretty typical for what you see in this area. It includes a little gangway and a somewhat rectangular shaped dock with a little cutout for the boat. It is 700 square feet, 35 by 20 feet. And that's what the applicant is proposing, and like I said, it's very similar to what you see in this area of the Willamette River. And so for docks, we do look at Section 705 of our zoning ordinance, and so you assess, the proposal against every single one of the criteria listed in there. There are, it needs to comply with the purpose, which specifically talks about the limited use versus the multiple use area. Assuming it's not in the limited use, it could be consistent with that section of, with that particular criteria under 705. It requires that landscaped areas, open space, and vegetation be maintained as much as possible. But it is understood that docks and, gangways do disturb the area a little bit. And so it is allowed, but they are required to replace vegetation that's removed and things like that. And then there's specific standards for docks. The maximum size is 700 square feet. There's a length to width ratio. Only one dock is allowed. Color, there's specific colors. And in this case, I'm happy to answer any specific questions about it, but in this case, the dock does meet all of those standards. And so staff finds that it can be approved, again, if the comp plan amendment is approved. So staff's recommendation is approval of both of these land use applications, subject to a number of conditions of approval, which are listed on pages 2 through 4 of the Planning Commission staff report. If you've looked through those, you'll notice most of those really have to do with the actual dock itself. And those are conditions that are necessary to ensure they meet all of those standards, like the maximum size and length to width ratio. They're just typical conditions that we find in a dock application. And then finally, we did have a Planning Commission hearing on these two applications on October 23rd. There was no testimony aside from the applicant. The Planning Commission had a lot of discussion and identified a few potential concerns, partly related to a concern about creating sort of a checkerboard pattern of doing these one-off plan amendments, and some concern about opening the door for just a whole slew of these to come in. And so staff does understand both of those concerns. I think regarding the second one that I mentioned, I'll just reiterate that this process is indeed available to anyone in the limited use areas. This is the fourth time in 4 decades, and so, and a lot of the properties already have docks, and so I don't think that, while I understand their concern, it is not the most efficient way to review things like this, and that's something that we can certainly look to in the future. But at this point, approving this isn't going to suddenly create this huge influx of new comp plan amendments to do this. And again, regarding this sort of one-off process and checkerboard pattern, again, we agree that it is not the most efficient process. And I think that there is an opportunity in the future to look at some legislative code amendments to change this process or change some things about the Greenway processes and the designations and or other criteria. But this is what's available right now. And so this is the process that the particular property owner has to go through in order to get this change to build the dock. Nonetheless, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously to approve both of these files subject to the listed conditions of approval.
Okay.
And that is it for me.
Thank you very much, Martha, on that. That was going to be my question, planning approval. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I appreciate all the hard work staff did and the Planning Commission. It's much appreciated. I knew they do a lot of work on a voluntary basis to go over these things, and I don't have any problem with the application and the recommendation either. So my questions are related in a way, more curious. So understanding it's a half-acre lot, not a lot of agriculture you can do on that. It is zoned EFU, as you mentioned. So if they actually wanted to use the dock for agricultural purposes, that would be, I assume, commercial use, and they wouldn't need a permit?
So that's an interesting question. The term, well, I'd have to see exactly what the comprehensive plan policy prohibits.
If it's too much work, don't worry about it.
It is not. It's right here in front of me, just about 20 seconds. Yeah, it specifically says prohibit private non-commercial docks and moorages, so I guess arguably there would be a way to approve a commercial dock. But in this case, it's pretty clear that there's no commercial agriculture on the property, and it actually is technically low-value farmland, so I don't know what you could do on a half an acre that would be considered commercial agriculture.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I had. Just curious.
That is curious that this is zoned to agriculture. Considering a half-acre lot, usually in farmland, you designate an acre for your home and barn or outbuilding, being in one of those areas. So a half acre, you are quite limited. It's very surprising. We have other commissioners. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, good morning. Martha Fritzie, thank you again for a very thorough briefing. You always make decision-making easy. I noticed that there's a specification for the color of the dock, and I assume that those colors are intended to make the dock blend into its surroundings. When we have a river that's navigated by many vessels, is there a safety concern when we put a dock in the river that is intended to blend into its surroundings? In other words, are there any safety requirements, such as reflectors and that sort of thing, to make it visible from boats on the river? That's my only question. I read all through all your material here, and that's the only thing that came out as an unanswered item.
It's probably the only question I can't answer, maybe not the only one. So I don't know. There's nothing in our zoning code requirements that speak to that. You are correct, there are color requirements, and they're sort of natural-looking colors. I don't think it's intended to actually match the river. I can say that docks also do need to be permitted through the state, and they have some standards also that need to be met. I don't know what those standards are. It is conceivable that there's something related to that, but I honestly don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and I support staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Commissioner West?
Thank you. I look at the map here on the subject site area in the vicinity. You have some riverfront property, which is, just to review again, surrounded by protected area. So the concern about it, like these popping up everywhere, I mean, we've got a Molalla State River Park, we've got Timber area, we've got Weber Farm Natural Area, a Canby Ferry. There's just not a section of this river where this would be this concern where we would have, I don't know, a blight of docks. And the first thing that just came to my mind after, all this maybe spoke about when I was getting a briefing on this, you go just up from the river here, you can see that it's multiple use where they wouldn't have to go through this process. This poor homeowner had to spend a large sum of money to get before us today so that we could be better local government. And I know all of us here on this board strive to be, good local government, and often land use gets in the way. And this is for this poor homeowner, government just getting in the way. Like we do not literally have a reason to have it be limited use or know why it was 40 years ago. And because of this government action, this guy gets this, or this homeowner gets to spend a bunch of money
Isn't
for
that
us to make a
sweet?
decision today to write something within a complicated code that is outdated, that we all wish could be updated. But it's a whole nother topic. So I know we're only dealing narrowly with this one, which is also kind of funny, this one little carve out in this whole limited use area, this one little patch, this one little tiny spot is going to be special in the limited use area. Unfortunately, today, we're not actually looking at this and just saying, let's just make that multi-use because it's the right thing to do, and nobody will ever have to deal with this again on a dock issue, and no homeowner will have to have this expense. So I just feel a lot of empathy for that homeowner that had to go through all of this gobbledygook, rigmarole stuff to get this done today. So of course, I'm going to support this, but I appreciate the work of our volunteer board. Oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. Who's the
Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission, thank you, that reviewed this, and it sounds like are coming to the same conclusion that we're coming to objectively, that a simple, basic dock on the river that blends into its surroundings should not have had to go through this unfortunate process that government made it go through. So I will leave it at that, but I will be supporting this change.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioners. I will now open public testimony on this item, beginning with the applicant. Is the applicant in the room or online, and does the applicant wish to testify? Tony, is there anyone online raising their hand?
If you are the applicant and you are on Zoom and you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
All righty, I do not see the applicant in the room. Thank you very much. Are there any public officials who wish to testify? I see none in the room that I recognize. Is there any public official online?
If you are a public official and you would like to testify, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Are there any CPOs or agencies that wish to testify? In the room, do I see a show of hands in the room? I see none. Tony, is there anyone online, CPOs or agencies, who wish to testify?
If you are a CPO or agency representative and you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you in the order received. No hands at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I now will open it to members of the public. I will call the names of people in the room who have presented a blue card. If you wish to testify, Tony, has there been any blue cards received? I see no one moving forward to testify on this particular item in the room. And Tony, is there anyone online from the public who would like to testify, or anybody else online who would like to testify?
If you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. I will begin with Sandra Hartley. Ms. Hartley, please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes. Ms. Hartley, you are muted.
Thank you. My name is Sandra Hartley. My area of residence is just a couple houses away from Mr. Griffin, the one who wants the dock. And as a person who lives here without a dock, Commissioner West was so good, and I really appreciate his understanding of what it is for those of us who moved into our homes after things were done. And to be told that you can't because it's zoned farm use and limited use does not make sense in today's world with what is on either side of us. We are putting the dock in will not create anything that the current docks don't. There are only 3 houses on this street that do not have a dock. And if they want one, I feel that they should be allowed one without having to go through what Mr. Griffin did, which was really abhorrent. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I certainly share your opinion. I share Commissioner West's opinion, and staff did indicate that in time we should take a look at this and not have it be a limited use, but quite possibly another use that makes it easier for landowners. And Commissioner West was right. Land use zoning gets in the way of all kinds of stuff, and it's costing people a lot of money that I believe is also unnecessary. Tony, is there anyone else?
If you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, do not have any hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I will now close the public testimony portion of this and open it up to any further discussion by the board.
None.
Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve ZO315-23-CP and ZO316-23-R as recommended by staff and the county's Planning Commission.
I'll entertain a second.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Scholl has moved we approve Z0315-23-CP and Z0316-23-R as recommended by the staff and the county's Planning Commission, and Commissioner West has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Now that the application has been approved, I will direct staff to draft an order reflecting this decision and include it on the agenda for this board's adoption at a future business meeting. Council, do you have any other comments for this board on this matter? Thank you, everyone, and thank you for all the good work by staff done on this. You have made a complicated issue very understandable for us, and it is greatly appreciated. We will move on to the next item.
Sure, if
Do I
could
need
have-
to recess?
If I could have a few minutes.
If you would
Commissioner,
adjourn.
yes, we will recess from this land use hearing. We're going to take a small break, about a 5-minute break, and return.